After a 4-year separation, Ragnar finally saw his long-missed ex-wife Lagertha again, because Ragnar cheated on her during their marriage. Lagertha left him, but unexpectedly, in his most difficult moment. Only this foolish woman was willing to risk life and limb to come support him.
I heard of your troubles. I brought these warriors to help you.
Lagertha met one by one with her former friends, even after 4 years. Everyone here still adored her. When they saw that Bjorn had already grown into a young man, everyone was genuinely happy for him. After a simple greeting, they discussed how to reclaim their lost home. Although Lagertha had brought troops and their combined forces had the advantage, Borg was guarding inside the city. If they fought head-on, they still weren't completely confident they could break through. Now their only option was to find a way to lure Borg out of the city. Fighting outside the city would greatly increase their chances of winning. Rollo suggested they could send someone to burn the grain they used to get through winter. Then Borg would surely leave camp. Everyone thought this plan was feasible. They all volunteered to carry out this mission, but Ragnar decided he and Bjorn would go with 2 men. He wanted to see if his son had grown into a true Viking warrior. At nightfall, the 4 quietly infiltrated the enemy camp. Grain stores have always been heavily guarded. The 2 warriors deliberately exposed themselves to draw the enemy's attention, while Ragnar and his son took the opportunity to sneak into the granary. Unfortunately, the 2 warriors were still discovered by the enemy while retreating. During the fight, one was bitten to death by a vicious dog. The other man managed to kill the enemy, but his thigh was sliced open with a deep gash. While the fighting was raging on that side, Ragnar and his son successfully set fire to the granary and safely withdrew with the wounded warrior whose leg had been hacked. The next day, upon learning the winter food supply had been destroyed, Borg was so angry he was speechless. He knew this must be Ragnar's doing, so Borg took his entire army and followed the blood trail to find Ragnar. Before long, they found a warrior blocking the middle of the road. Borg went forward and saw the warrior was already dead. This was none other than the warrior who had died from blood loss after being seriously injured. At this point, Borg hadn't yet reacted, but the next second, Ragnar appeared with his main force right in front. Fleeing in the face of battle was not the Viking way. The 2 sides clashed as soon as they met. The Vikings' fighting was indeed bloody enough. A willingness to die coursed through their very bones. Just as the 2 shield walls were locked in a stalemate, Borg ordered a small group of troops to retreat 10 meters. Then, with his order, all the men charged straight at the enemy, breaking their shield wall. With the formation scattered, both sides fell into single combat, but Ragnar's side had the advantage in numbers. Moreover, they were determined not to rest until they reclaimed their home. Before long, Borg's side gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. Seeing the enemy fighting with increasing valor, Borg knew the situation was lost and hurriedly fled. But at this point, Ragnar was already in a killing frenzy. He only had eyes for Borg and even ignored the soldiers beside him. Fortunately, Rollo knocked away the soldiers in time, narrowly saving Ragnar. Ragnar went over and found the man he had just killed was not Borg. Meanwhile, Borg had already mounted a horse and ran away like a stray dog.
For what?
After the victory, Ragnar returned to his territory. The people poured out of the city to welcome him along the road. It was clear Lagertha's prestige was still very high. Even after 4 years away, her popularity still far surpassed the Slog's. Just as everyone was caught up in celebration, Ragnar couldn't be happy, because he knew Lagertha would leave soon. He found the seer to ask if there was any way to make Lagertha stay.
I love 2 women. Both of them have given me children.
And you suppose you must choose between them?
No. I don't want to choose. I would like to have both of them.
I see.
The seer tells him that you can't have it both ways, and that you should have thought of that the moment you cheated on her. A depressed Ragnar returned home. Sure enough, a Slog immediately confronted him. She said she was pregnant with his son again and he had to choose between her and Lagertha. He could only pick one of them. Ragnar was at a loss for words. Fortunately, Bjorn happily came to their side with his two brothers, diffusing the awkwardness. Before long, Ragnar found Lagertha again. In fact, Lagertha knew the purpose of Ragnar's visit. She wanted to test if Ragnar would have a change of heart, if he still loved only her as she did him, so she deliberately said she didn't know what to do next. Ragnar's answer has already let Lagertha know the answer.
Bjorn is very happy here.
Then he should stay. You both should stay.
Your wife would not be happy.
I imagine not.
The next day at the council meeting, a subordinate brought back news from England. Ever since Ragnar left, King Horik had been ambushed. Many warriors had sacrificed their lives. They heard King Horik and his son had escaped, but Athelstan was missing. Just as Ragnar was grieving for Athelstan, Lagertha came to the council hall with her son Bjorn. In front of everyone, Lagertha delivered an important speech. She said these past days, she found her son was happy here, so she decided to leave Bjorn here to live with his father Ragnar, but she was now Sigurd's wife. She had the responsibility and obligation to return to Sigurd's side until he died of old age.
Look after him, Ragnar. He's all I have left.
After saying this, Lagertha prepared to leave. A slog chased after her to express her gratitude.
Thank you. I will always be in your debt.
The debt is already paid. The future is open. Trust in the courts. Live for each moment.
Lagertha embraced the woman who had broken up her family. Lagertha was that kind of foolish woman. Lagertha was such a foolish woman, who made a slog, her son and Ragnar whole, but left the pain and suffering to herself. In England over 1,000 years ago, Christianity was the sole faith of the vast majority of people in this land. If you betrayed Jesus and believed in other gods, then being crucified and having your corpse left exposed in the wilderness would be your only fate. Fortunately, Egbert happened to pass by. He ordered Bishop Edmund to spare Athelstan's life. Egbert kept Athelstan alive not out of mercy, but to learn about the Vikings' way of life from him. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will never be defeated. This way, he could better understand those barbarians. From this, it was clear that Egbert was indeed a very open-minded king. Soon, he used the laws Athelstan had learned from the Vikings to decide cases. In England at that time, the status of women was so low it's hard to imagine, especially the wives of Christians. Even if you weren't unfaithful, if your husband said you were, you had to accept legal punishment. Egbert asked Athelstan how the Vikings would handle such a case.
If she was a free woman, they would believe her word and make judgment on her behalf.
But surely her husband has every right over her. Surely she belongs to him to do with as he sees fit.
Not according to the pagans.
Egbert was amazed that the Vikings advocated equality for all, so he pardoned the woman for the crime of public parading.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, Lord.
Oh, well, don't thank me. Thank this pagan.
Before long, Egbert's son Prince Ethelwulf found Athelstan, wanting him to attend Massachusetts, because he knew Athelstan had previously been a clergyman on the English side. Athelstan was extremely conflicted. He himself wasn't sure if he believed in Jesus or the Norse gods deep in his heart. Athelstan looked at the crowds of people on the roadside and suddenly, as if seeing a miracle, he thought that the Virgin had forgiven him for his betrayal and he happily got up to welcome the Virgin. Only when the other person took off their hat did Athelstan clearly see it was the woman from not long ago.
I just wanted to thank you.
That's... No woman should be treated like that. Especially not a Christian.
Athelstan attended Mass with Ethelwulf. Athelstan probably felt guilty. He had another hallucination. He saw the wooden carving on the cross bleeding, and many images of praying in Norse temples flashed through his mind. Only at this moment did Athelstan truly realize that in his heart, the Norse gods had replaced Jesus. The priest stuffed a piece of sacrificial bread into Athelstan's mouth. Athelstan instinctively spat the bread out and hid it in his hand, just like when he was holding the cross pendant in the Norse temple. The difference was that time he was discovered by the priest, and this time by Ethelwulf. The scene shifts to the Vikings. Siggy found the seer, wanting to ask if she could return to her former glory and have power again. In this show, the seer could always accurately predict the future. The seer told Siggy the gods always favor brave women. As long as you attach yourself to a promising man, anything is possible. Siggy seemed to understand something and left satisfied. A few days later, King Horik arrived at Ragnar's territory with his son Erlender. After being ambushed by Egbert, Horik narrowly escaped with his life. Now there was only one ship left to return. Ragnar arranged a dinner banquet for Horik. The feast wasn't very lavish, because in fighting Borg, Ragnar had burned his own winter food stores. At the banquet, Ragnar asked about Athelstan's whereabouts.
Where is he now?
If he is fortunate, he died in battle. In any case, let's not speak of him. He was a worthless individual.
Ragnar showed a hint of displeasure. After all the years of friendship he had with Athelstan, Bjorn also said he and his sister had liked Athelstan since they were young, but Floki said,
He fooled you, young Bjorn. He never denounced his Christian god. He was our enemy. And we should rejoice at his death.
Ragnar asked Horik what he planned to do next. Horik said he wanted to get revenge on Egbert. After destroying him, they would continue raiding westward and establish colonies. Ragnar agreed with Horik's idea, but unfortunately, even combining their forces and ships now, it still wasn't enough for them to head west again, and they still had to guard against Borg's sneak attacks. Horik proposed a solution. Why not ally with Borg again? Then all their problems would be easily solved.
Don't listen to him.
Who should go to Jarl Borg?
I think it should be you, Rollo. After all, you know him better than anyone. What do you think?
Ragnar tacitly agreed to Horik's suggestion. The next day, after a reluctant farewell to Siggy, Rollo hurriedly set off for Borg's territory. As soon as Rollo left, Horik took Erlender and slipped into Siggy's room. This was the real reason Horik had sent Rollo away. Ever since he was intimate with Siggy last time, Horik couldn't forget this mature, charming woman.
Why do you invite me to your bed?
Everything I do for Rollo.
And not for yourself.
If Rollo rises, I rise also.
And what would you do, Siggy, for my continued and active support?
To gain Horik's support for Rollo, and to regain her former glory and power, Siggy decided to sell her body again, but she never imagined Horik was no ordinary pervert. He actually proposed letting his own son enjoy the feeling of a mature woman. Faced with this humiliation, Siggy wanted to get up and leave, but she remembered what the seer had told her, so she resolutely walked into the bedroom and took off her clothes. You've seen all kinds of drinking vessels, but I can guarantee this is the first time you've seen someone drink from a skull. Even more unbelievably, the owner of this skull is none other than Borg's wife, who passed away many years ago. Just now, Rollo came to Borg's territory on the orders of his brother Ragnar. The purpose of his visit was to persuade Borg to go west with Ragnar to raid. Borg was extremely surprised. I have invaded Ragnar's territory before. There is an irreconcilable feud between him and me. How could Ragnar be so magnanimous as to include me and his party to go looting together? Rollo explained that in the previous westward expedition, Ragnar and Horik had lost more than half their men. Now they didn't have enough ships and troops to support another westward expedition. For small countries like ours, cooperation is the only way forward. Borg was a little tempted, but before that, he wanted to ask his former wife's opinion. Ever since his wife passed away 10 years ago, he carried her skull with him at all times, even when sleeping.
You think I should go? She thinks I should go. Torby, bring us some meat.
Yes, Jarl Borg.
The one pouring wine into the skull was Borg's current wife Torvi. Who knows what she was feeling at that moment? Borg handed the wine to Rollo. His meaning was clear. If Rollo had the guts to drink the wine, it would signify that the cooperation was agreed upon. A few days later, Borg arrived at Ragnar's territory with 3 warships. Watching the ships approach, the corners of Ragnar's mouth curled into an imperceptible, sinister smile. What Borg didn't realize was that this time, his misplaced trust in others would subject him to a torture even more cruel than Ling Chi. 1,000 times over, in the evening, Ragnar held a feast for Borg. During the banquet, Borg found Ragnar and spoke his true feelings. He admitted that Ragnar was greater than him. He never thought Ragnar would put aside their grudge and take him west to raid together. Borg swore, saying, "From now on, I will strive for our common goal. You need not doubt my loyalty." But faced with Borg's sincerity, Ragnar said, "Actually, I didn't want you to join our alliance. It was King Horik who wanted you to come. But I thought about it later. Cooperation benefits all three parties, so why not?" After saying this, Ragnar ordered his men to arrange accommodations for Borg. Meanwhile, Horik found Siggy and expressed his gratitude for her night of passion with his son Erlender.
For what you did for my son. You made him a man.
Do not ask me to do it for your other sons. I am not a whore.
Just for me.
But unexpectedly, their conversation was overheard by Floki. Siggy was instantly flustered. She hurried over and told Floki not to reveal this secret to her husband Rollo. That night, who knows if it was because Floki told Rollo about this, but Rollo grabbed his axe and rushed out of the house. At the same time, Borg also woke with a start from his sleep. In a daze, he saw a vision of the seer appear before him.
Yes, I can see. And I see an eagle. I see that an eagle hovers over you. But I also see that you yourself are the eagle.
Until this moment, Borg still thought the eagle symbolized a good omen. Suddenly, he heard a commotion outside. Just as he grabbed his sword to defend himself, it was already too late.
I told you. I always look for revenge.
At the same time, while Borg's soldiers were all asleep, Ragnar's men locked the door and set fire to it, burning all the soldiers inside to death. Screams and wails resounded through the sky. The huge disturbance woke Horik. He went to Ragnar's room and demanded to know what happened. Before long, the badly beaten Borg was brought before Ragnar.
Why have you done this?
Did you really think that I could ever forgive this man for threatening to kill my family?
Since you consort with eagles, I will draw a blood eagle on your back.
No.
And your rib will spring apart.
Hearing about the Blood Eagle ceremony, Borg was completely terrified. As a Viking, he knew this was a punishment thousands of times more cruel than Ling Chi. Borg's face was filled with fear. He kept begging Ragnar to spare him.
Yes.